Hello and welcome everyone to the second session of the Global State of CX Day, a series of webinars taking place to explore the results of the upcoming 2021 Global State of CX research. The Global State of CX Day is sponsored by Infobip. I am your host, Olivia Powell, Assistant Editor of the CX Network. Each of the three sessions today are dedicated to a specific geographic location. This one is, of course, the EMEA session, where we will be looking at calculating the return of investment from improved customer retention. First off, I'll spend a couple of moments introducing the research findings from our study, and then I will discuss these findings in more depth with Nikhil Shoorji, Infobip's Managing Director of Europe. Our agenda today will begin with research analysis on the Global State of CX report. After this, we will move on to the current state of play of calculating ROI from CX, where Nikhil will give us insight into where CX practitioners are at currently. Following on from this, we will look towards the future in terms of how CX practitioners can prove ROI from CX. After this, we'll have an audience Q&A session, so make sure you submit any questions you may have for Nikhil. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping points. As audience members, this is a listen-only presentation, so you don't need to worry about finding the mute button. But nevertheless, this is an interactive webinar, and questions and comments are encouraged. So please enter any questions you have in the Q&A chat boxes on your screen. We do have a dedicated section at the end of the webinar to answer your questions. Likewise, for any technical issues, a classic but surprisingly effective tip is, if you're having audio issues, give your browser a refresh. Failing that, please contact us via the chat box on your screen, and a member of the CX network will be with you right away to troubleshoot your issues so we can get you back on track. The widgets on your screen can be resized and dragged around, and so with that, make sure you're sitting comfortably, as it's now time for me to introduce our speaker today. With me, I have Nikhil Shoorji, Managing Director of Europe at Infobip. It's so great to have you with us today, Nikhil. Would you mind telling the audience a bit about yourself and Infobip before we get started?
Thanks, Olivia, and hi, everyone. I am Nikhil, and I run the business operations for Infobip here across Europe. We are a global leader in omnichannel communication, and we strive to make it our business to simplify how brands connect with and engage and delight their customers at a global scale.
That's so great. Thank you again for being with us today.
Thanks.
Every year, the CX Network conducts its annual research into the global state of customer experience to map market opportunities and hurdles, as well as predicting trends for the remainder of the year and beyond. This year's study gathers insights from more than 280 customer experience experts. We invite CX professionals to utilize the results by benchmarking their organization's progress against peers and competitors. The full report will be made available to the public tomorrow, but as attendees to the Global State of CX Day, you guys have fast-track access to the report. You will see the report is hosted in the resource centers on your screens. Today, we are going to unpack the key findings we encountered when we assessed the insights from CX practitioners operating within Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, or the EMEA region. When we were exploring the findings according to region, we noticed an interesting trend in regards to proving the returns of CX investments, especially with practitioners based in EMEA. Proving returns from CX investments appears to be attracting more focus from CX practitioners in comparison to last year, and the need to prove ROI from CX appeared to be more pronounced in the EMEA region than the global average. While companies may enjoy the financial rewards from customer experience spend, they often lack the visibility to correctly attribute these returns to CX efforts. This dangerous disconnect between ROI and CX can threaten the future of CX investments. Over half of EMEA respondents in the Global State of CX Report 2021 reported that the pressure to prove ROI from CX to win budget or resources was going up, and over a quarter reported that their CX department needs to deliver returns to be taken more seriously in the business. Additionally, 45% believed that there were ways in which their business benefited from CX initiatives that went unmeasured. Gaining buy-in can help build more respect for CX in business, which can in turn make staff members take CX projects more seriously. Likewise, CX ROI success stories can be used as currency to persuade decision makers to back the launch of future customer retention projects that may be more complex or experimental. Likewise, when considering strategic investment priorities for 2021, a third of EMEA respondents said that their biggest obstacle in bringing these investments to life was proving ROI. There are a number of ways that ROI from CX can be calculated, including NPS scores, revenue, and customer churn rates. When measuring returns from CX for the wider business, a holistic approach is crucial to limiting the amount of returns that go undetected. These return metrics can include how these CX strategic improvements will improve cash flow, how these CX efforts will reduce cost, and how these CX efforts will open up new innovation opportunities. To evidence the ROI of investing in customer retention, many brands employ the following calculation: the number of customers in their base that signal they are detractors multiplied by the estimated average cost per customer. This will determine the organization's at-risk revenue and act as a quantitative financial metric for ROI. If your project is targeting a pain point in customer journeys that often sees drop-off or triggers customer churn, this calculation can be used to identify the potential savings from placing investment or attention into fixing this pain point. Employing this calculation can also link customer retention to financial outcome and demonstrate retention successes to executives. To help CX investments deliver the returns that are promised in business cases once they are rolled out in the face of many of the corporate distractions shouting for staff attention, CX practitioners will have to fight and to prevent a launch and forget approach from taking hold in the company. Tracking the trajectory of CX projects can optimize the rollout by illuminating areas for improvement while also identifying successes to encourage stakeholders and support the project's momentum. This will ensure life after pilot is sustained after the initial interest and novelty has waned. Without the alignment and support of the end-to-end business, investments into customer retention are unlikely to reach their full potential. Alignment can be achieved by highlighting the reasons behind the project and the business benefits up for grabs. Another integral element is to provide a structured plan of action that allows staff members to integrate the new project into their daily roles. Staff members can stand as a crucial part of bringing an investment's return to life if the mission behind the CX investment is communicated to the business intelligently. Overall, it appears there is still work to be done in mastering these methods, as just 16% of respondents in the EMEA region say that they are trusted by their business to be more experimental with CX projects because of the returns that they have delivered through previous CX projects. So, everyone here has tuned in today as they are interested in learning more about proving ROI from CX and customer retention. We'd love to hear the status of where you, our audience, are at in terms of proving ROI from your customer experience, and so we have a poll for you. How would you rank your brand's ability to calculate ROI from CX? Number 1, a lot of CX returns go unmeasured. Number 2, some CX returns go unmeasured, but we managed to catch the important ones. Number 3, we track most of the returns from CX. Or 4, we track all returns from CX. Or 5, unsure. Now, I'll give you, please select your answer on the screen and remember to click submit. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to fill in the poll. And again, I'm just going to repeat the question. How would you rank your brand's ability to calculate ROI from CX? 1, a lot of CX returns go unmeasured. 2, some CX returns go unmeasured, but we managed to catch the important ones. 3, we track most of the returns from CX. 4, we track all returns from CX, or unsure. Based on our research, I would be very surprised if option number 4 came out on top, but let's see where our rankings are. So, as we can see, our most popular answers is number 1, a lot of CX returns go unmeasured. It's great that you guys are here then, developing your knowledge and learning new skills. Nikhil, based on what we're going to discuss today, are you surprised by this answer at all?
No, I'm actually, it's a consistent answer. It's something that, all of us actually strive to measure. And because of the complexity, and I'm sure we'll go in more detail down the line, and the research also proves it. But this is on track with the general trend.
Yeah, that's correct. But yeah, like I said, it's great that you guys are here, and hopefully you'll leave this webinar with more information on how you can actually measure those returns from CX. With many cultural and operational hurdles to overcome, it's become imperative to enhance ROI and CX techniques. Without branching out, CX practitioners run the risk of losing executive buy-in and funding for vital projects to boost CX. So, We have Nikhil from Infobip here with us today to dive a bit deeper into how CX practitioners can prove ROI from CX by using customer attention and provide his top tips on maximising the returns seen from investments into customer loyalty. So, as seen in the global state of CX research, EMEA CX experts flag ROI as one of their worst investment challenges and the second toughest challenge holding back CX projects. Nikhil, why do you think CX practitioners struggle to prove ROI from CX initiatives?
Olivia, so traditionally CX practitioners have measured the impact of initiatives carried out by them through customer satisfaction surveys and net promoter scores. However, to decipher the real value of the CX initiatives, it is very important to focus on the metrics throughout the customer journey and not only any specific part of it. Right from when the customer is a first visitor all the way to being a loyal customer. The end goal of any CX initiative is to obviously improve the customer experience and satisfaction, but to measure the ROI correctly and other success metrics are needed to increase the calculation. So one has to take into consideration the customer conversion, average transactional value, number of repeat visits, churn rate, cost to customer service. All of this has to be calculated and considered. When you put these metrics across the customer journey, you will know what works and what doesn't, and then it'll give you a better idea of what to invest and what's the right CX technology for you to put in for your unique customer needs. One of the biggest hurdles we've seen is that the C-suite is not working together in organizations because it is extremely vital for all leaders to put the customer and the customer experience at the heart of their own objectives. 73% of digital transformations fail. So it is very critical that leaders align on the outcomes that they want from their business and their customers with a joint plan on how to get there and how to ensure a continued focus on addressing these real customer needs. It is also difficult to see the benefit of technology when you don't see how it fits into your existing system and culture. So there is a fit that needs to come in, and you need to find the perfect mix which allows you to take care of the customer as well as integrate with your existing systems. We have helped a lot of our customers across different verticals in achieving this. To give an example, in the digital native space, ride-hailing app Bolt was able to increase their driver registrations by 40% just by providing the correct customer experience to the right channel. You can read more about this on the State of CX report that is launched today. So I think that should be quite exciting. One of our fintech customers, DinaPay, was able to expand their customer base by more than 50% by providing the right mix of WhatsApp and SMS, through our single platform, and providing that interactive communication with their customers. And I believe Enrich, one of our retail customers, was able to provide a personalized service in their CX throughout the customer journey, and that allowed them to increase their sales and loyalty.
Thank you. So it's all about that customer centricity and making sure that customers are the core of the business, but obviously also trying to prove that introducing customer centric initiatives are going to actually benefit the business. So a study mentioned that almost half of the EMEA experts felt that many of the business benefits generated from CX projects go unmeasured. What business benefits do CX projects provide, and why are they going unmeasured?
Good customer experience leads eventually to higher customer lifetime value. However, one of the most common reasons for them being unmeasured is the inability to connect the customer behavior and the journeys to business critical KPIs. Our focus in running operations and running business is always on revenue, churn, cost to serve, and quite a lot of other indicators. And I would say the primary reason for this disconnect is data silos. In order to provide this end-to-end customer journey, CS practitioners need to track and store customer behavior in a centralized manner. This is extremely critical. And all their CX tools, such as channels, data platforms, contact centers, customer engagement hubs, and chatbots need to seamlessly sync together with one another. Without this, it becomes more futile to try and link it all together and get a proper result and a proper ROI on the initiatives. There are a few other factors also, Olivia. Word of mouth promotions, brand perception. Sometimes there's a huge benefit which is hidden and prevents loss of market share. So all this plays in a big role. And I think according to your survey, 45% of respondents found CX benefits go unmeasured, and the poll online also showed the same thing. So it seems to be preaching to the converted here.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, with data silos, there's also data within the Global State of CX report 2021 to show that data silos is a huge issue for many companies as well. So it's kind of interesting how all those different issues that companies may be having are all linking together. So could you please provide a calculation formula or technique for calculating ROI with customer retention projects?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. There's no simple answer there, but I think one has to consider a lot of factors, and a lot of metrics need to be used in order to calculate the ROI. Just to name a few, you have to consider, the number of call center agents that are involved, the cost per agent. You have a lot of voice license fees, license costs, the number of requests which come in per month, per day, average call durations, voice traffic costs. So if you consider all these costs, you put them together, and with the help of CX experts, you will be able to take this and start sharing how you can provide a proper ROI into the business. We do have ROI calculators that use this information and help customers gain buy-in internally for these CS projects, because that's also critical. And like I mentioned, if the C-suite and if different departments are not working together to enable this customer journey, it's not going to have any kind of positive result. Mm-hmm. And the ROI calculation, is also very unique for each organization. It's not there isn't a vanilla cookie cutter solution here. But as long as you consider all these metrics and all these factors and costs, and then align on your business KPIs as to what you need, you'll be able to join the two together and come up with a formula.
That's great. So obviously it's probably a very complex formula, but obviously if you look into all the different factors that contribute to it, then you should be able to work it out for your business. Okay, so our research has shown that customers are more willing than ever to swap brands in reaction to bad experiences. What does this mean in terms of demonstrating CX ROI?
So, regardless of the quality you put into marketing and the people and the loyalty programs, customers are loyal to their needs at the moment and not to a particular brand. So it is tricky, but it is very important that you're able to provide, a seamless customer journey across multiple channels, keeping the customer in mind, and providing it to them whenever they need it. And this consistent flow is what I feel would be the best way to prevent them from jumping ship. And that said, I think 1 out of 5 customers said that they had switched brands during the lockdown due to bad quality of communication. So it is very important that the communication is made at the right time. I mean, we have a saying, we need to send and receive the right message at the right time through the right channel. And if you're able to do that, then you're able to get the customer on board. I also think more than 50% agree that communication has now become super critical after the pandemic. And, all kind of customer experience revolves around that communication going back and forth. To give an example, banking, traditionally people would never think of switching their bank account or, the bank, they'd stick to it. But now times are changing and people now consider it as an option.
You're so right. Customer communication is absolutely key for providing, good customer experience and, being there, for the customers when they need it. So according to CX Network research, customer journey mapping is one of the most important investments for CX practitioners. In terms of defining ROI, why is customer journey mapping so important?
So customer journey mapping is a projection of the customer's life cycle phase by phase. And right from the first time they visit to them purchasing and then, beyond and becoming a loyal, I would say brand ambassador, because word of mouth in itself is the best marketing. But this customer journey maps help businesses to know exactly what attracts their customers and allows them to trace the customers along this journey at all touch points. This enables them to highlight the weak spots so that they can concentrate their efforts and make up ground over there. And most importantly, we've all been on online web pages and then suddenly dropped the sale halfway and then gone for whatever reason. So it is critical to understand that drop off. Why has the customer dropped off, and why hasn't either the sale or the entire journey been completed? So helping the team focus on how to strengthen on those touch points, and most importantly, re-engage the customers and make them a loyal customer is critical, and it is very important to focus on. And that's where these journeys, these mappings really help. I did mention personalization briefly, but it is also very important that you provide personalization through these journeys, because that really helps and enhances the experience for the customers. Also, modern day customers have access to, ever-growing channels of communication, and if you're unaware of or if you're not sure, it would be good to actually see what the competition is doing. And accordingly, if they're investing in it, it's very important that, you catch up and you make sure that you're also there, on the same battlefield. We touched on communication, and I mentioned channels. So it is very important to have this seamless shift and movement between channels during the customer journey. This can be easily seen in customer mapping. And again, the failure points are some things that are highlighted during these customer mapping exercises and can be fixed. To give an example, Unilever we ran a campaign for Unilever, and using this conversational campaign, they were able to increase their sales 14x, just using a WhatsApp Business API chatbot.
Wow, that is really impressive, and it does kind of go to show that, by finding out what it is that your customers want and then catering to, the way that they expect to be communicated with, because obviously we are in the digital age now, and as more and more companies do move their customer service to online, instant messaging chats and things, I think we are going to see more and more of that. But that's incredibly impressive. So the Global State of CX research found that EMEA CX experts are experiencing rising pressure to prove ROI with CX. Where does this pressure come from, and what can they do to mitigate it?
I think at this point in time, economic times are not, as rosy as they used to be, and especially after the pandemic. People are a little unsure what the customer experience really is now, because it has changed so quickly and so fast. Traditional retail, traditional banking, which you could consider some of them as digital laggards, they were just used to the in-store experience, the face-to-face experience, and in the past they were not that comfortable moving into the digital realm. But due to the pandemic, due to the way things have shifted, the customer experience has definitely leaned towards going digital. And we're still learning as we go. So it's not a set path. So this kind of is quite a hurdle for brands and businesses to switch. On the similar topic, or actually a continuation of that, budgets have shrunk. I know it from my side, and I know it from my peers and businesses that we talk to. I do believe some of the surveys showed, as you mentioned, the budgets are quite low. They're under 50,000 euros, which, were much higher in the past, for the communication channels. Cultures are also quite resistant to this kind of change. And also a lot of companies are quite, how would I say this? They're stuck with legacy systems. And although it's very, we have done it a lot in the past with our customers, where you add a patch on top and you're able to augment existing legacy systems. But still, this is a hurdle, and this is something that internally businesses need to look into in order to digitalize and move into this realm. I did mention, once before about, the C-suite having to work together to align their business goals. Unless that is done properly, you're going to get data silos. You're going to get, mismatched initiatives, which again form hurdles and hindrances and cause additional pressure. So this internal communication in companies is actually going to enhance and allow external communication too. So everything starts from within, and then it's easy to project it outwards. Also, I did mention competition. So, if brands are unsure, a good way to take off the pressure is to actually, see what others are doing. And, if they are investing so much on it, there has to be some research or some method behind it, or some risk. But either way, if you need to keep up, it's important you see what's happening in the market and you follow suit after looking into all the considerations.
Yes, so it really is all about that internal communication and fixing things from the inside of your business. Thank you so much, Nikhil, for this discussion. It's been really useful. I'm sure our audiences will find it useful as well. So now we're actually going to enter the Q&A portion of our of this webinar. So if you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those. If any questions are unanswered during the webinar, don't worry, we will get to your question and we'll answer it after the webinar. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at these questions that have come in. So we have a question that's come in. It says, how can I connect customer lifetime value to good customer experience?
Interesting. So, look, good customer experience leads, eventually to higher customer lifetime value. However, one of the most common reasons for this being unmeasured, as I mentioned, was alignment and business critical KPIs. So if you stick to that, where you have the internal initiatives and KPIs and concentration on revenue and loss of churn, if you link those to the customer journey or the customer experience, it'll automatically provide a larger lifetime value from those customers.
Great, thank you so much. We also have another question that is saying, how can CX be made more personal?
Interesting. So data, like we mentioned, one of the problems is the data silos, but on the flip side, the amount of data that is available today and that is, voluntarily shared by the consumers and by customers, actually is there to enhance that personalization. And we've seen it with a lot of customers from the beginning of the customer journey and transitioning from one channel to another. It's having that personalized service, using the data that's available, can really enhance the experience, and it actually makes you feel one with the brand. And today, using the digital tools, it is very, very simple to do that. And we have one single platform which links across different channels. It also links across different technologies, and it's able to link into existing systems. But this has evolved over a long period of time. So one has to look at the current setup and current systems available for the business, what are critical and what is nice to have. And by putting it all together, you'll be able to provide this personalization to the customer.
So it's all about using the tools that you have at your disposal to, bring your customers what they want in terms of personalization. So this next question says, in my opinion, currently, the focus in measuring CX is too much towards tools and metrics. And one very critical element is forgotten, meaning the people, customers who give feedback and employees who request and handle received feedback. What's your opinion? What do you think of this?
I actually think this is interestingly on the right track. Tools and metrics has become the focus for especially this topic of ROI calculation. Because end of the day, as a business manager, we definitely need to see whether we need to invest more or go slow on a certain initiative or investment. And this has to be quantified. On the flip side, there are a lot of points which cannot be quantified. I briefly touched on one or two of them, which is, the brand image itself, hidden benefits which pop up from changes in the market scenario, which of course cannot be tracked by tools, and most importantly, feedback. I think it's just like how you are able to manage descriptive and quantitative analysis. What is the best mix and what is the best percentage to use? I don't have an immediate answer on that, but I think it has to be looked at case to case. If the investment is really heavy, then I would say the focus needs to be more on tools and metrics. If it's a more broader, phased-wise, smaller investment, then of course feedback has a much more has a much higher weightage in the analysis.
So you kind of have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so leading on to this next question. So this person asks, what do you think the most important CX KPIs are other than churn and customer lifetime value?
Okay, so I would actually say consistency. So I've seen certain cases where certain channels of communication have been, perfectly set up, but the transition onto another channel or on other channels themselves were not up to the mark. So although you're able to grab the customer's attention, you're able to actually provide something that the customer wants, when it comes time to actually close the deal or close the sale or convert the customer, the transition doesn't take place properly. So it is very important that brands and businesses are able to provide a consistent level of service across all channels, across all technologies that exist. So the consumer should not feel that there's a misstep or that there's a gap. And actually, honestly, the customer doesn't want to know what's happening behind. They just want to kind of interact between the two. And
Yeah, that's good. That's really interesting. So we have another question. This is more to do with differences in techniques between B2B and B2C businesses. So it says, do you think that approaches or techniques towards proving ROI from CX initiatives should be altered when it comes to B2B?
Interesting question. I think, again, the channels that are used need to be altered, but the base interactions and the base concept remains the same. Because at the end of the day, even for B2B, there is a customer or there's a person inside the business who is going to be interacting and who would be either your champion or who would be taking the decisions. So if the experience for that person is good, you're able to keep the entire B2B interaction happy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's all about, again, like you were saying, it's about looking at things from a case-to-case basis. So I've also got an interesting question about these KPIs. So it says, do you think we should compare NPS and customer satisfaction scores between markets, considering that different markets may have different cultures?
We would most definitely have to consider the cultural differences. There are a lot of other factors which would already be put into the baseline for different regions. So I think the baseline needs to be shifted and adjusted for every region, not only based on culture, but also based on the current market scenario, the current needs, the current economic situations.
Yeah, that's correct. Obviously, it's one of those things that you do have to consider when you're looking at things like this. This is interesting. So this is looking at what you keep saying. Obviously things that need to be considered on a case-by-case basis within companies. So this person asks, do organizations have to use only the most common metrics to measure customer experience, or could they develop their own in addition, which are the most suitable ones for their context, to help the organization to receive answers to why questions and are connected to business objectives? Could these also be linked to employees' objectives?
Each customer is unique to each brand and each business. So like I mentioned, there's no cookie cutter vanilla product that's going to give the right answer. It is actually, I would say that this is a very, very smart, intelligent question, and the question has the answer in it. It is most important to use metrics just as, again, I'll use the word baseline. But in order to consider what actually works for a business, what works for your type of customer, and how much of this new digital interaction is mimicking the need for in-person interaction. That is the key in a customer experience and a customer journey. And I say this from myself. So tomorrow, if I'm dealing on behalf of my company, or if I'm dealing on behalf of myself or for my family, end of the day, it's my experience throughout all of this, and it's different when I'm dealing with a different product or service. So each product seller or each service seller would know exactly how best to take my feedback and actually make my experience with them much, much better.
Yeah, so right, customer journeys are completely unique between customers, but also across different brands. So yeah, I think you're totally right about that. I have another question here that says, what do you think about the utilization of qualitative research studies, evaluative mostly, on ROI and CX?
I think it's very important to understand what the trends are and to use these results and then obviously modify them and use them again towards the larger investments, because this is the global trend, or these results actually show you what the industry is, in what direction the industry is moving in, and accordingly you can make your larger investments, and then of course tweak it based on your specific business or your specific region.
Oh yeah, and finally we have a question from someone said, could you please repeat some of the metrics named for calculating ROI with customer retention projects, please?
Yeah, there are quite a few. So it really depends on the total software and the tools that are actually in place. But some of them are a number of call center agents. So of course it's most important. Human capital is the biggest asset we all have. So that's something that we need to consider. The cost of. Then again, there's the cost of agents. You have infrastructure, and you have a lot of other additional costs which come in to host the agents. There are license fees. So it could be, the voice agent license fee for different software that's being used. Normally this is yearly. You also have to consider the average call duration, the call costs, what kind of communication channels are being used in the mix. And of course, the voice traffic costs, again, of sending out the communication, not just receiving this communication. So these are but a few, and then of course there are a lot more involved, and there are a lot more costs which keep coming in and keep flowing in. But as long as you encapsulate as many as you can, you're on your way to getting a good ROI calculation.
Great, thank you so much for going through these again. And we just have time for one more question. And this question is to do with Infobip. So it says, for Infobip, what channel generates the most engagement across Europe?
Oh, across Europe. Oh, that's an interesting question. So I would say, look, primarily it has been SMS, but a lot of customer experiences require rich content. And for that, we have, I would say, WhatsApp is at this point providing the best interactive channel in Europe. And across the globe, I mean, It's really interesting. I'm actually on, this. I'm actually on holiday, and I was happy to take this call. And it was really interesting to see, these small boat rentals. They're all mom and pop stores, and you go to them, and they come and they say, "Here's my number, but you can contact me on WhatsApp. You can contact me on Viber. You can contact me on Signal. You can SMS me, and or call me." So it was just really funny to hear that call me is actually the last option when you are interacting with someone and they're trying to make a sale. And I'm like, okay, it's tradition gone down, to the end of the line. But yeah, so WhatsApp tends to be the most popular interactive channel today that we've seen here in Europe, and it's picking up. So there's still a lot of scope to include it.
We truly are in a digital age. I think we are moving further and further away from phone calls as we go. Nikhil, thank you so much for these insights, and thank you to our audience for submitting your questions. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. If your question's not been answered, don't worry, your details will be passed on and you will be contacted by our team. If you'd like to share this presentation with your colleagues or to rewatch it, you will receive a link to an on-demand version shortly. Let us know what you thought of the session in the exit survey. As a thank you for joining today, we are granting all attendees with fast-track access to the full Global State of CX research, the Global State of CX in the resource centres. Please do take a copy of the report with you before you leave. The resource centres on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, and just click on the link to access your copy of the report. A copy of the report will also be emailed to you today. Thank you for joining this session. We hope to see you again. And that concludes today's webinar.
Thanks, Olivia. Pleasure to be here.
It was great to see you too.